Hey guys, it's Mr. Anderson here. Today I'm going to be talking about whole steps and half steps. This is a lesson that I gave all of you guys early in the year when we first got our Chromebooks, but it bears reviewing. If you play a stringed instrument, I know whole steps and half steps are super easy to comprehend just by looking at your instrument, because you can see when you play from an F sharp to a G that your fingers are much closer together than when you play from an E to an F sharp, where your fingers are very far apart. But a piano keyboard is really the best way for everyone to visualize where the whole steps and half steps are. Now, the first thing we have to be able to do before we can talk about where the whole steps and half steps are is we need to know how the piano keyboard is laid out. So let me show you on this piano keyboard. There's a couple of different landmarks. As you can see, the black keys come in groups of 2, like that, or in groups of 3, like this one over here. The landmark you can look for is whenever there's a group of 2, the key that's immediately to the left is C. And just like on a staff, all of the notes from there go in alphabetical order. And I can go backwards. The note lower than C must be B. There's an A. There's a G. There's an F. E. D. C. Now the black keys all have names that go with the white keys that are near them. So every black key has both a sharp and a flat name. It's a little bit higher than the key below it, so we can call this key C sharp because it's higher than C. It's a little lower than D, so we could also call it D flat. This is a little higher than D, so we can call it D sharp. And it's lower than E, so we can call it E flat. I can go all the way through the keyboard in this way, and I could have an F sharp and a G flat between F and G, a G sharp and an A flat between G and A, an A sharp and a B flat between A and B, and then you'll see that the whole keyboard starts over again when I get to the next letter C. Now, knowing the letter names is important so that we can then know which notes have whole steps and half steps that are associated with them. So on a piano keyboard, any keys that are neighbors are going to be a half step apart. And some of these keys, it's more obvious that they're neighbors than others. So if I take a look at this, I see that this black key and this white key here are a half step apart. They're neighbors. And black key to white key to black key to white key. We see right here between E and F that these keys are also a half step apart. So a couple places in the keyboard we end up with white keys that are half step apart. Again, half steps between all these keys here. And then here we have B and C, also a half step apart. Now, just like in math, 2 halves make a whole. So most white keys are a whole step apart because there's a key between them. That's a whole step. That's a whole step. We already talked about this one being a half step apart. Whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. I know it's confusing when we see these natural half steps in the keyboard because we want all of the white keys to be whole steps, but it doesn't work that way. E and F and B and C, they're called natural half steps. They're always a half step apart. Now, we could also have whole steps between black keys. Between these 2 black keys is a whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step. Now, this sometimes confuses people. What if I wanted to take the note E flat and go up a whole step from E flat? Well, I'd have to skip a key, so I'm going to skip over this key and end up on F. So E flat to F is a whole step up. If I were on F sharp and wanted to go down a whole step, it'd take me to E. B flat up a whole step takes me to C. If I wanted to go B up a whole step, I can't go to C. I'd have to go to C sharp. So anytime I have 2 keys that are immediate neighbors, I know it's going to be a half step. And if I see 2 keys that are have a key in between them, I know they're going to be a whole step. And notes that are further apart have different names too. I'll teach another lesson later on about the intervals that are greater than a whole step. Now, we can also hear the difference if we listen carefully. So here's a C and a D. Those notes are a whole step apart. If I instead went from C to C sharp, I can hear that those two notes are much closer together. Again, here's a natural half step, E to F. You can hear those two notes are very close together, a half step apart. And E to F sharp is a whole step. Now this piano is online, anyone can get there. It's called virtualpianonow.info. If you just Googled virtual piano, it would probably come up. There's also a pop-up keyboard on musictheory.net, and you can play around on that, listening for the difference between a whole and half steps. You can even play games with yourself, like, start on an F, and go up a whole step, and a whole step, and down a half step, and up a whole step, and see where it lands you as you work your way around the keyboard. Being able to visualize a piano keyboard and being able to know where the whole steps and half steps are is very important in understanding how scales are built. And if you understand how scales are built, you understand how the keyboard is laid out and where whole steps and half steps are in your music, it's much easier to play music without playing wrong notes. I want to encourage you to make sure that you're studying the piano keyboard, memorizing the layout of the keys, and that you know where the whole steps and the half steps are on the keyboard. Thanks for watching.